This combo is called Crazy Figures. So I'm a little surprised I haven't really seen this in any other videos or anything, and I'm almost sure somebody else has had to have come up with it because I mean, they're both 1.5 mount based tricks, and it seems like it's a very easy transition into these two. So you're going to want to know, obviously, the two tricks, which is crazy eights and figure eights, and you're basically just combining them. So first you're going to do figure eights, and then you're going to stop in the 1.5 mount, crazy eights, and then you're going to point your finger towards yourself to unwrap, because when you do crazy eights, it's going to put a wrap on your finger, and you're going to want to unwrap by pointing your finger towards you and then performing another figure eight, and then you should be back in the 1.5 mount by the end of the trick. So you end up in the 1.5 mount. I'll go ahead and show you that now. So unpoint your finger, then perform like half, I guess, the back half of a figure eight, and you're back in 1.5 mount. So from there I do some of these things, which I'm not even sure what those things are called. I've definitely seen other people do them though. It's just like, a quick bounce back and forth kind of deal. I'm sure there's tutorials out there for it, so I'm not really going to get into too much depth about that. Then I usually just, kind of unroll it, jump it onto the string like that, but I kind of do it in a long transition kind of deal so it looks cool. And then I do another kind of thing, which is like, sort of like skin to gerbil. So I do, kind of a skin to gerbil thing. And then I do like a roll, and then a bind. I like to do that roll bind a lot. I just think it looks good with that trick. So yeah, that's crazy figures. Obviously tips, you're gonna have to learn figure eights and then crazy eights, and then after that you're just gonna kind of try and want to learn to like transition to the 1.5 mount between those two tricks. So when you're doing crazy eights and figure eights, just learn to land in the 1.5 mount afterwards. So if you can do that, and then you can kind of from there transition into doing the two tricks together, and after that just trying to get them seamlessly together, and I think it looks quite good. Obviously there's other variations of figure eights that you can kind of add a little extra loop in there or whatever, but I like to do the figure eights and crazy eights together like that. It's something I do a lot, and I think it's pretty fun to do. It's pretty hard though. I would say you're going to want to have pretty decent spin on your yo-yo when you throw it into other stuff. Anything from 1.5 mount, I mean, once you get into 1.5 mount, you can start that trick. You can pretty much do this trick from anywhere, but just keep in mind that it's going to kill the spin of the trick spin of the yo-yo pretty easily. So I usually try to have like, maybe a small combo in front of it, and then go into that, because I know it's gonna kill the spin on my yo-yo. Even if you do it like exactly perfect, it's hard to keep the yo-yo completely in plane. And also another thing to keep in mind with this trick is I use this trick to test stability as well as gap, the setting of the gap and the pads. And the reason for this is because this trick is very kind of finicky in the way that if you're not keeping it perfectly on plane, there can be a lot of issues like tilt, and because I do it so fast, it makes it so that if the yo-yo is unstable, it can often turn a lot on me. But when I can obviously compensate for that, but it's just a way I can easily test the yo-yo, is to say, hey, how does it handle crazy figures? And if it can handle it pretty well, it usually means it's pretty stable. But if it off axis is when I'm doing, like a very wide sweep of that trick, then it can mean that it's kind of not so great instability. Also, when I was referring to the gap in the pads, the reason for that is when you're doing this trick, first of all, you're going to try to have as neutral string tension as possible. It can be a little twisty, but the reason for this is the rougher the string is from being overly tensioned, it can rub on the pads. And this trick it has enough string wraps, and because you're moving so quickly, it rubs a lot on the sides of the yo-yos. And that's what's causing the instability, as well as what's causing the also off-axising the yo-yo is causing instability, but it's also a contribution to the fact that it's slowing down the yo-yos because it's got string wraps that are turning as you're doing the trick. So you got that wrap going through there, and what's that's going to feel kind of snaggy on a yo-yo that doesn't have a gap that's designed well. So often in my videos I'm saying, oh, this yo-yo feels snaggy. I use figure eights to test that, and obviously crazy eights and figure eights together is the trick I do most of the time. And that's just because crazy figures is really good for testing stability, but figure eights is actually the trick that I use to test the gap. Just because the way in which the string moves through the gap, it can cause the yo-yo to slow down if that gap's not designed right. But it can also be kind of fixed by adding a center track. Can help a lot if the yo-yo, is not so bad. And most yo-yos, it's not a big deal. And a lot of times the ones that I say have a good design of the gap usually just have a center track in there anyway, and it's possible that that's what's causing the gap to feel right to me. But I have had yo-yos that have something like a concave, which is notoriously bad for having string wraps cause the yo-yo to stall, and I've had yo-yos that have the gap designed well to where they still bind good, and they also have a concave in them and are able to do figure eights no problem. So I just wanted to add that on as just like a little bit of information for you guys if you're testing yo-yos or want to know if a certain yo-yo works pretty well with a certain trick style. Just know that whenever you're having a lot of string wraps, the center track is going to help a lot, and oftentimes if the gap's not just designed right or the pads are too thick, then it's going to rub when you get a lot of string wraps and cause the yo-yo to stall. Another thing is, I didn't really show it in the video very much, but this trick, if you're trying to do it fast, you're gonna have to smack your forearm quite a lot. It's just happens in this trick. Any kind of weave trick like that, like figure eights or crazy eights or anything similar, you have a tendency to, when you're trying to do it fast, if you don't move your arms in and out enough, you're gonna smack your forearm. So be careful. Yeah, so that's the trick, crazy figures. Hope you guys liked the video, and yeah, check out my other tutorials if you haven't already.